Akon's wife files for divorce. Akon has previously said he believes in polygamy, and in a 2022 interview, he revealed that he has 9 kids. And musician Amira alleged in 2023 that she was one of the star's 4 wives.
Bummer for Akon. Long-term marriage. Got to move on. Maybe hang out with some of the other wives now. Allegedly. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast, coming to you live on X and on the Riverside FM platform. For some reason, not live on YouTube. Not sure about our technical difficulties. With me, as always, Rahul Iyer, the amazing Rahul Iyer at Chicago Divorce Online. And I'm at Raiford Palmer, hosting the show today, coming at you fully loaded. Yeah, this is going to be a good show. We are locked and loaded. We missed 1 week. We're back in action and loaded for bear today. So without any further ado, as I like to say, let's get into it. So Rahul, this one's particularly special. We've been really having fun putting this show together. First off is Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. Now, they've been in a divorce situation for a while, but what's the scoop on them now?
Yeah, so came as a giant bombshell, but people just found out the end of September 30th, I think, the couple who have been married for 19 years filed for divorce. So I guess unbeknownst to everybody, beginning of summer 2025, they split, they started living separately. And as everyone found out retrospectively, as they say, and then their last public outing was June 20th of 25, where they were together. Their wedding anniversary, their 19th anniversary was June 25th. And then they found out that Nicole had curiously applied for residency in Portugal sometime, late of July.
Interesting.
Right. And so there were family photos for Nicole Kidman where Keith Urban was not pictured. This happened in August. And then August 28th, as it turns out, Nicole Kidman's lawyer prepares what we call a parenting plan, where it said that the two of them would be quote unquote joint custodians and Nicole would be the primary residential parent. And so obviously that sends off, divorce bells, etc. And then August 29th, they sign off on getting divorce paperwork, etc. And then end of September on the 29th, people find out that they had split and that they had gotten divorced before anybody knew about it. So very interesting, long-term celebrity couple, 19 years strong, just got divorced. Now, interestingly enough, they did it all very amicably. They did it quickly, under wraps, as you want. Obviously, as always, we say they cited, irreconcilable differences because that's the ground for dissolution. They got divorced in Tennessee. And so they have, as part of the public record, their divorce documents. So anybody can go on and see them. You can see what their parenting plan's like, who's paying what money to anybody. Here, nobody's paying anybody anything. They're each keeping what they have and they're going their separate ways. And we'll link in the show notes. So if you're curious to go check out their documents, you can. We'll put a link up in a public website. You can go check it out. Makes for an interesting read if you're curious to get into the affairs of celebrities.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because depending on the jurisdiction, you might be able to ask to hold out part of these documents. Like some folks put in a shell document, and depending on the court and the location, you might be able to put in sort of a framework divorce agreement and then hold out details. Or frequently we will take like the balance sheet, so the financial details we will hold out in a separate document that doesn't get published. But these are public records, so this is a rare opportunity where you can see a celebrity divorce laid out in black and white. We always talk about the fact that we don't have much in the way of detail on these cases.
Right. One of the cool things they did was, which we suggest if you have the aptitude, the bandwidth, the capacity for it, if everything else plays out the way it's supposed to. These folks had their lawyers, kept everything a secret, negotiated the whole divorce, signed off on everything, and then filed for divorce on the very last day. So they filed for divorce on September 30th after news of their split broke on September 29th. But before anybody could mine what's going on, they'd already been divorced, so there's no scope for rumors, this, that, and the other, as the paparazzi get involved. So they had everything lined up and then filed, so that way it's all done before people know it even began.
We always talk about this. Keeping it private is important and not fighting, and they've done all that. For some reason, their documents are public, so if you're curious, the link is in the show notes. A lot of stuff to get through today, a lot of it really good. So the next thing is, I came across this post on Instagram where I do heavy legal research, and E-Bombs World, it's like a kind of a gag account. Just post all kinds of random funny stuff. This says Adin Ross confirms he was served a deposition subpoena, I'm guessing, by Megan Thee Stallion in connection with the defamation lawsuit tied to the Tory Lanez case. Now, we haven't been following this, but I had to mention this. Ross claims that Megan Thee Stallion or her legal team sent a mariachi band to play music outside his house to lure him outside, where they proceeded to serve him the subpoena. They call it deposition papers. So I thought that's one of the more original things I've heard of to get somebody served. And Rahul was telling me before the show, what was the process server trick you heard about?
Oh, yeah. So a friend of mine had the hardest time serving someone with divorce papers a couple of years ago. So they talked to their process server about it. And so what the process server did was the process server had a buddy who has a tow company. They showed up to the house where they want to get this process served, and they were pretending to sort of tow the car away, sort of like a repo or whatever. So the person runs out saying, "Oh my God, what are you doing? That's my car." And they say, "You've just been pranked," right? Ashton Kutcher doesn't jump out, though. You've just been punked. Instead, they say, "Here's your paper. Here's your divorce paperwork. You've just been served." So
there was one time our firm handled a case where we represented a mom, and the dad was a famous comedian who shall remain nameless. The process server dressed up and went to one of the guy's comedy shows to serve him at the show.
Oh, that's great.
Sometimes you have to get creative if people are avoiding service. So, okay, let's talk about Akon and his divorce. That's the next item up here.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of celebrity stuff going on here. Akon's wife files for divorce. It says days before their 29th wedding anniversary. The significance of that is I still question, because typically the longer you're married, at least in Illinois, in a case where one party makes substantially more money, you might be entitled to a longer term or amount of maintenance, etc. So curious that they did it right before an anniversary. Usually they file right after an anniversary. Anyway, estranged wife Tomika were married in 1996, and they have a 17-year-old daughter named Journey, according to this article. And so wife, has requested physical custody of their teenage daughter. And she, again, as we talk about, cites irreconcilable differences. She requested joint legal custody of Journey and requested that she have physical custody of her, and Akon gets visitation. She also said she should get spousal support. So TBD. Akon has previously said he believes in polygamy, and in a 2022 interview, he revealed that he has 9 kids. And musician Amira alleged in 2023 that she was one of the star's 4 wives. So maybe this isn't a big deal for him. I don't know, but it's fresh off the press here. So we'll keep up what's happening, and we'll update as needed. Yep.
I was curious about Akon's hits because I was cool in the 80s.
Got it.
And let's put it that way. I'm Gen X. So I'm sure I've heard some of these songs. So I Googled it. It says the singles Smack That, I Want to Love You, and Don't Matter achieved commercial success.
Yep.
Akon's biggest hit, according to Google, is Lonely.
Oh, that's really interesting. Right Now is also a really good song by Akon. It all came out, around 2000, between 2005 and 2010 is where he really, really blew up.
By the way, do you know Akon's full name?
I do not.
Found out when I Google it. Well, I will tell you. Aluane, and if I'm mispronouncing it, is my apology. Aluane Damala Buga Time Puru Naka Lululu Badara Akon Thiam, or Thiam. So good thing that he's got it down to Akon. Thank you for your courtesy in this matter. So interesting enough, his parents' names are more what you would say conventional. Kine Gaye Thiam and More Thiam. I may be mispronouncing it. He's Senegalese, which I did not know.
Yep. He's from Senegal. That's right. He used to be one of the biggest artists in the world at, late 2000s. So, interesting. Anyway,
bummer for Akon. Long-term marriage. And he's got to move on, maybe hang out with some of the other wives now, allegedly. Gigi Hadid and Bradley Cooper's wedding on hold. Okay, we got to tell you about this one. So this is why we said this is a good show today. All the links, of course, in the show notes as usual. So credit to Yahoo for this. Bradley Cooper reportedly finds it quite challenging to marry his girlfriend, Gigi Hadid, because she's rough looking and all that, due to his feelings about his past involving his parents. Rumors of the Oscar-nominated actor and the supermodel dating each other began to emerge in 2023. Since then, fans, I'm quoting the story, have spotted the 2 high-profile celebs on various occasions. Then on Hadid's 30th birthday, she made her relationship with Cooper Instagram official. Remember, folks, it ain't official if it ain't Instagram official. Okay, anyway, she sneakily included a picture of them kissing in her carousel. By the way, not a carousel, her carousel. Her. Pronouns are important, or possessive pronouns, right? They also share a close bond with each other's daughters. Despite their relationship milestones, a source said to Radar Online Cooper is terrified of marriage.
Okay.
Further sharing, he has an idealistic view of his parents' marriage, which was rock solid until his dad's death in 2011. The individual added, so it's hard for him to take the leap, or so this is what he's telling Gigi. Meanwhile, the insider claimed it's Hadid's mother, Yolanda, who started to lose patience with her daughter's boyfriend putting proposal plans on hold. This is a quote. Yolanda can see how much Gigi adores Bradley, the source explained. She wants to see her girl happy and secure. Okay, Bradley is 50. Gigi is 30. I just don't think Brad's in a hurry to do much of anything, folks. Rahul, tell us about one of our show rules about dating and marriage. You remember that timeline we talk about for how long you can date to get married or engaged and then married?
Yeah. If you're dating, what was the exact number of years?
Our gag is like, if you don't know where you're going after a year or two, there's issues. And it seems to me Mr. Cooper has commitment issues, or so this is my imagination, allegedly.
Well, given the fact that they are 20 years apart, his life is nearing its sort of, not the end, I wouldn't say. Obviously, he's 50, but it's like nearing, it's sort of like she's just starting her 30s and he's starting his 50s. So their outlooks and their priorities might be disaligned. It's a lot to ask for both.
It is. I looked at, I want to see, is he married before? Answer, yes, for all of 1 year.
Oh, okay.
To a woman named Jennifer Esposito, who's roughly his age. And I don't think they had kids. I just clicked on a link that I saw on Google. Bradley Cooper can't marry Gigi Hadid yet due to prenup stress, source says.
Oh, okay. So that's a legitimate response.
Stressed about paperwork and therefore avoiding marrying Gigi Hadid.
Okay.
Insiders close to Bradley and Gigi insist the latter isn't pushing her beau to marry her. Gigi's not pressuring him, a source told Radar Online, is ordered everyone in her life to do the same. Okay. And with Taylor and Travis getting engaged, here it is. Do it.
It's the summer of love. You got to do it.
Yeah, it's bringing heat to the situation. There it is. Now, how many women in America are getting into their guy's ear and saying, hey, Travis proposed, so what are you doing? Yeah, get off the dime, dude. This is beautiful. This couldn't be more interesting. So Gigi's family and friends are trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and trust he's going to work up the guts to take this next step. However, they added, quote, it's a little suspicious given his history being so non-committal. Oh, well, what do you know?
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
There it is. That said, American Sniper is still one of my favorite movies.
Why hasn't Bradley Cooper popped the question? Well, apparently Gigi's family is wondering as well. Okay, Rahul, tell us about Coldplay. Now, shocking revelations from remember the great Coldplay internet explosion. Tell us what happened after that went supernova.
Well, People magazine article says that, essentially a few months after CEO Andy Byron, astronomer CEO, was seen at a Coldplay concert with head of HR, Kristen Cabot.
A company and an executive nobody on the planet did not know about until that day.
Exactly. She was the chief people officer, right? HR. And then, he had his arms wrapped around her. And then the minute the cam panned to them, the kiss cam, she ducked out of view and created this sort of moment. We always talk about it. We talked about it before the show as well. It's like, if you didn't do anything, nobody would have even noticed it.
The camera would have just gone right past them.
Exactly. So apparently, though, Cabot, the lady, says that it doesn't actually reflect the real story because she was already divorcing her own husband before attending the concert. And although he's married, she insists that she was not breaking up a marriage. So apparently the two of them, Kristen and Andy, had an excellent working relationship. There was no affair. The source says it was inappropriate to be hugging your boss at a concert, and she accepts full responsibility for it. But the scandal, the downfall, it's all
being
unfair.
That she's the HR person. She's like Toby from The Office.
Exactly,
So he's got his arms around her, and she admits that's inappropriate, but there was nothing else untoward going on, she assures us. I'd read something online about this a few days back, and I didn't know if it had been substantiated. And I was thinking, okay, why didn't she immediately tell the world this news when this was going supernova? Wouldn't you come out with a statement and say, look, this is a misunderstanding. My husband's separated. Get him to chime in. Do like a joint online post and have the husband would say, yeah, I'm cool with this,
Right.
And I'm separated from her and it's fine, because it went nuclear and they didn't say a word. And then this comes out. I don't know how long it's been, a couple months now?
Yeah, it's been about a couple months, 2 or 3 months maybe.
There you have it. This story I had to see because I'm a Foo Fighters fan and Nirvana too. I'm a Gen Xer, so any Dave Grohl story gets my attention. The fate of Dave Grohl's marriage to wife Jordan Blum, Jordyn Blum, has been revealed a year after. He's 56, so he's my age. Okay, rock and roll, Gen Xers. He shares 3 daughters with his wife after tying the knot in 2003, so long-term marriage, 22 years. Here's the punchline. He announced In September 2024, he welcomed a baby girl outside of their marriage. Did a baby girl just walk up to his house
welcome.
and like, welcome to this baby girl? You know, like somebody donated a child and like he adopted the girl or something like that, you know? No, it turns out that a year ago, he had a love child, and it turns out it was a rock and roll fan named Jennifer Young. Interesting. This is Daily Mail, UK. The source told People in an article published Saturday, this is a few days back, that Grohl and Blum are moving forward together despite the shocking bombshell 1 year ago. The insider said the mom of three has forgiven the musician and the couple are very happy. Well, good on her. That takes a lot of counseling. They never wanted a divorce, though. The idea of splitting up their family was too sad for both of them. They love the girls. They're both great parents. Okay. Well, if they can keep it together and happy for them, I'm sure there's some interesting conversations going on between Dave Grohl and his wife. Or, I mean, we don't know. This is one thing Rahul and I said we've talked about before offline, and I've talked about with other people many times. You never know what's going on under the hood of somebody's relationship. You just don't know. The other thing is everybody has their own deal, you know, their own social contract or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there are 1,000 varieties of marriages. And, you know, when we apply our conventional wisdom to things, we don't know what's going on. So this might have been something she was cool with from the beginning. Who knows? I'm guessing. So the headline of this thing was that a year after this secret baby was revealed, they said the fate of their marriage has been revealed. Like, well, they're staying together. Okay, well, you know, I guess so.
We're staying together.
And I guess last year in September, Dave Grohl went on social media and talked about the baby girl. And the term was he welcomed a baby girl outside of his marriage. It's just such a weak way to say it. And then there was divorce stuff going on. And last year in November, Grohl called off his divorce lawyer to try to work things out. So, I mean, they did it right. They got counseling, I guess. And that's my imagination. I'm assuming they did. And they got it back together. So good on them. Keeping it together for their kids and everything. Wish them all the best. But I love the backwards way this article was written and described this situation. Okay. All right. Next, this story is interesting. The Wall Street Journal posts the link in the show notes under personal finance. The story is that mortgages are so low that people are choosing to nest and stay in the homes. And normally they would sell or refinance and somebody would move out and get another place. But people have these, 2%, 2.5% mortgages, and it's causing people to stay put. In some cases, not get divorced at all. In other cases, stay in the same home and nest, which means share the home back and forth, or keep living in the same home because costs are so high with new homes. So, Rahul, have you seen that in any of your cases?
Yeah, because it comes to a point of a lot more people are talking about looking into if they can assume a mortgage, if they have to get divorced, or they say, look, we've just got to go a few more years to sort of have this child leave. If they have kids, let's just stay here. It's cheap, we'll bird nest or what have you. Or they really just see if they can do it. So yes, absolutely. I see that a lot.
Yeah, and I have too. This pattern is being repeated because rates are popped up and are quite high, and also real estate values have gone up. So it's kind of a perfect storm. So people are trying to bend over backwards to make this work financially. And some people have really great mortgages and their monthly payments are really low. So this article just goes into detail talking about various people where they just can't make it work without figuring out how to handle the house, at least for the time being. So,
I mean, it's like you can't get those 2% interest rates. It's like a once in a generation rate. I mean, once in a lifetime, once in a generation rate. So
it was unreal. I mean, I remember when my first mortgage was 8.5, I think, in the in the 90s, and I bought a home in the early 2000s, and rates got to like 7 and then 6 and 5, and I kept refinancing. It's never going to get lower than this, and it just kept getting lower. And I think I ended up with 3.25 on a 30-year fix, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, just crazy. So interesting story on that one. So Rahul, tell us. This is another news story talking about. This one about equal custody laws. Talk about this one.
It was an X post I think you found, actually. So it was very interesting. We're not going to go through the whole sort of article that it links to, but essentially it said that the headline was divorce plunged in Kentucky and equal custody for fathers is a big reason why. And it says the law setting 50-50 custody as the state standard was hailed as a victory for fathers, but critics say it puts mothers and children at risk. And so the comment was by the poster meaning the person who posted it, says, fascinating how divorce rates in Kentucky plummeted after 50-50 shared custody was set as a standard, sort of implying that, people file for divorce when they think they're going to get primary or majority custody of the kid.
Did a little Googling to find some more stuff. Kentucky apparently is reporting a 25% drop in divorce rate between 2016 and 2023, which this AI answer at least says is a greater decline than the national average. Well, I don't know that for sure. We're not quite sure, but this 50-50 custody law issue is a hot topic around the United States. Some other states, Arkansas, West Virginia, Florida, Missouri, have adopted similar legislation. A 50-50 bill died in our legislature a couple of years back, and I'm sure it'll come back from time to time. Just for a little background, this is where the default is 50-50 parenting time. And Rahul and I have talked about this before. These 50-50 laws are kind of a misnomer because the flavor is different in different states. So people just kind of go, oh, it's 50-50. And they just assume it means equal decision-making and equal time. That's not true. It could. Different states have done it differently. Some say the default is joint decision-making and 50-50 time. Some say it's 50-50 time and the court needs to decide best interest on decision-making. And some go the other way. So the gist is right, but the details matter because decision-making is, who decides school and healthcare and all that stuff. And then, parenting time is what we call visitation. So it is important to know the nuances depending on your state. So what's interesting too, though, is this could be correlation without causation because there's a substantial drop in divorce rates in our state over a similar time period. Now, I have data through only 2017 because our state, for some reason, decided not to publish this stuff on the website, even though I know they have the records. It's all online up to 2017. And there's a steady ramp going downward in divorce rates. And we know that ties into a nationwide trend. And Rahul and I have talked before on this show about what we think about it, what we're not clear on with data. Is it really because people are staying married longer? That's one theory, that people are getting married older and more intentionally. The other theory or thinking is, well, it's just a general drop in divorce because there's a drop in marriage rates. So you might think the people that are getting married really, really want to be married, if that makes sense. And the people that aren't super interested in marriage are just having children without getting married. And it's more socially acceptable. So theoretically, the people getting married have a higher chance of success of being married because they want to be married, if that makes sense. They're not just getting married for their mom and dad or society or, cultural norms. Anyway, I digress, but we just thought it was an interesting thing to mention because they mentioned this trend in Kentucky. I think it may be a correlation without causation because how do you do like a double-blind study to figure out what is causing people to stay married and ask them, oh, it's the 50-50 law? I'm not so sure. Let's walk through that a little bit. Are we saying, oh, because it's default 50-50, women are getting divorced? Let's say women would go file. And now they say, well, since it's 50-50, I'm going to stay married. Really? How are we going to know? And then guys are not going to get divorced because of 50-50. You would think guys would more often get divorced. If you're thinking a barrier to divorce is guys worried about losing their children or not having parenting time, you think men would say, or the other parent would say, oh, this is great. I'm guaranteed half 50-50 decision-making and time or whatever. I'm much more confident about getting divorced. So I'm not so sure about this.
And here's where people, I think, this day and age, they sort of like to get these headlines and they run with the headlines. It might be shocking, etc. But it's really imperative to do a little bit more sort of critical analysis and critical thinking for people who are reading these sort of headlines on Twitter, thinking, oh my God, yes, of course, that must be it. Because, this is a 2017 bill, first of all. So it's nearly a decade old now at this point. It's like 8 years old. Secondly, you've got to think, and, there probably are, I believe, just some quick Googling says there may be exceptions to this presumption that's 50-50. Like if the child was conceived through some sort of an assault or some sort of other situation, the parent might lose custodial rights. This also means there's just a presumption of 50-50. You can go to court and say, that's not good for this child for these following reasons. So it's not like you're getting 50-50, that's it. And so beware, if you're going to get divorced, it's 50-50. I think that's a very low-hanging fruit analysis there for people to sort of do. So you got to think a little more critically here.
We try to shed light on these things because you read these stories in the press and they just kind of throw out these things because it's clickbait and it's attention grabbing to post a headline that says 50-50 custody laws equals drop in divorce. Well, you can say these two things are happening and they're drawing a connection with no basis. So it's interesting. We're going to move on to our questions and answers segment. And this one these are questions from our private Facebook group, the Illinois Divorce Support Network. Link in our show notes. Free to join, anonymous to post. We answered the questions. Also, the 1,500 members and growing in the group, which is awesome. It grew from 2-3 people to 1,500 over a couple of years. And now it's is growing very quickly. This is Illinois specific, folks, but we answer your divorce questions, paternity questions, and then also the audience or the rest folks in the group post answers too. And we kind of crowdsource information. So it's been really useful. Okay. So without any further delay, I'm going to launch into the first question and we will then discuss them. We've got 3 topics up for discussion today. So this one is about what we call imputed income. And here's the question. Any advice on how a judge would rule in Cook County? For those of you who don't know, Cook County is where Chicago is located. I work part-time 3 days a week that I could be with the kids for more than the past 7 years. So saying I work 3 days a week so they could be with the children. Would they calculate my child support and maintenance, which is alimony, based off of income, based on how much I work now, or from me working 5 days a week rather than 3? My current job would not allow me to work 5 days a week, maybe 4. They prohibit working anywhere else as part of my contract. So Rahul, what do you think about that? This is a concept, and maybe I'll just set the stage briefly. In Illinois, we have a dual income model. The income of both people in the couple are considered in our formula. We have a couple different formulas used for calculating child support and alimony, which we call maintenance in Illinois. And we have this concept of imputation of income, or call it simulated or pretend income, which means if somebody isn't earning enough income in the eyes of the court, the judge can plug in a number to come up with the correct calculation for child support and alimony. So Rahul, can you expand on that and then talk about this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Cook County, and this is a Cook County question, but I guess generally in Illinois, since the laws are based on states and not counties necessarily, child support and, like you said, spousal support or spousal maintenance are generally calculated based on a party's actual income from all sources and not really on hypothetical or potential income unless the court finds that the party or you are voluntarily underemployed or unemployed, at which point a court can, based on evidence at some sort of an evidentiary hearing or trial, after looking at the evidence, impute certain income to you. So there are several key factors that a judge will actually consider. So what is your actual current income from your part-time job? I know you could expand a little bit more, but whatever your job considers to be your full-time may not be what the traditional 40-hour model for full-time might be, but that's necessarily the full-time you're able to get at your employer, especially if you've been working the schedule for several years and it's not a recent change that, someone can point to say you're doing this to increase the amount of support you're getting or something. Are you voluntarily underemployed? If you are voluntarily working less than you're capable of, and I'm not talking about like the 5 extra hours or whatever, but rather substantially more, the court can impute income, meaning, like you said, Rafe, calculate support as if you were earning that money. So the court can say, look, I'm not going to go make you work 5 more hours, but I'm going to assume you are working 5 more hours or you can work 5 more hours, and I'm going to, calculate your income as if you were working all that additional time. So the court can do that. However, Illinois courts will also recognize valid reasons for working part-time, such as, caring for children, health issues, lack of available full-time employment, etc. And it sounds like here, you've been doing this for the past 7 years. So since you have worked part-time for 7 years, specifically to care for your children, among other things, and your employer doesn't really allow you to work more days or have a second job because that'll violate your contract, I would say that there are strong arguments that your part-time status is not an attempt to avoid support obligations. And, if you can actually demonstrate that the part-time work is long-standing, necessary for childcare, not a recent change, and provide evidence that you're not actually underemployed and this situation has been sort of the status quo standard operating procedure, I think there's a strong basis for the court to not obligate you to work more than what the maximum amount of time your current employer will let you work. So the additional 5 whatever hours you can get, etc. But beyond that, I don't think a court will impute additional time to you. Now, that said, this is one of those gray area questions. So the judge matters, your attorney matters, the other attorney matters, the specific facts matter. So that's not to say, there's no way, a judge is never going to tell you to work more. Depending on the day, the circumstances, the judge, etc., the judge might say, look, you could quit your job and get a different job that's paying you maybe a little less, but hourly or what have you, but you get a full-time gig versus your current job, etc. So, or a judge might say, look, what you worked as during the marriage, because you had the framework of a marriage, changes when you get divorced, and at that time you have to get a different job because now you're no longer married, so that whole structure falls apart, and he'll do a lot of the child rearing during his time or her time, and you'll do the same during his time or your time. So that all matters. But what I explained previously was just sort of how I would argue it, right, if I were in your shoes.
2 things came to mind. One was the thing you're talking about, which is a lot of people kind of think the past is prologue, meaning, well, because for 7 years I worked 3 days a week, then that should remain that way. Like Rahul said, that's how he would argue it. And that's the right way to argue it when you're on that. It's the mom's side in this case. But the flip side is that's not necessarily how the parenting time is going to go down. And a judge might do a 50-50 split of time or something where the other parent is going to take on a lot more parenting responsibility, freeing up the person to work more. And the judge is not necessarily stuck with what you did X number of years leading up to the divorce, whether it's visitation or a financial situation. So it's not unusual for somebody who's working part-time where a court is going to impute full-time money, especially with older children. And another thing is like a stay-at-home parent when the kids are school age and they're working part-time and they say, oh, it's important for me to be home and all that. And that may all be true, or that's a parenting choice those parties made during the marriage. Well, when you get divorced, the court's mindset is probably more like, well, you need to pay the bills first. And those other things, when you were married, one of you staying home was kind of a luxury to some extent. And it may be better for the kids, but judges are much more sanguine and practical about these kinds of things. So just don't assume that because it's been that way, it's always going to be that way, because you're in for a surprise if that's your mindset. So, okay, that's a good one. Moving on to the next one.
So question is, parties are still married. They're separated, but not legally. No court proceedings. I've paid for my husband. So let's say wife has paid for husband's and kids' healthcare through the marketplace for years. Both parties were self-employed. Husband is now employed with benefits, and wife filled out all his paperwork to hand in and included herself as obviously one of the beneficiaries or one of the parties covered. It sounds like it's a few dollars more for him, for her, the wife, to be on it. She thinks it makes sense. She even offered to pay half. Husband is telling wife he's not including her on the insurance. Her question is this legal? Can he do that?
Right.
She's also paying for 2 cars and kids' car insurance premiums. So they sound like they might be older children or adult emancipated kids, since they have car insurance.
This is a good one because there's a couple of things wrapped up into this. The first one that strikes me is nothing's filed. So anything goes. If you want to stay married to this person, and they can say, well, I'm not paying for this, or I'm paying for this and not that, or whatever. Well, you're choosing to accept that. If you're not in divorce court, you have no judge to do anything or take any action. So it's certainly not illegal. It's not illegal for the husband to tell you he's not going to put you on his insurance. Now, one thing is interesting. The Family Expense Act in Illinois says that medical expense, it's a dumb move on his part, because medical expenses for somebody's family are joint and several liabilities. So that means if you got gravely injured and incurred medical debt, he's on the hook to pay it. Even though you're the one who gets hurt, the other spouse is on the hook to pay it. Those debts are joint and several. Joint and several means each person and all of them together are liable. So he's not out of the woods just because he isn't paying for health insurance. In fact, that's very dangerous because he's on the hook for those expenses. If you can't pay, they can come after him. So that's true for the children's medical too. So when somebody does that, really they're kind of cutting their own throat proverbially, because they're now subject to all these risks. Like if you get badly injured and there's surgical costs or whatever. But more importantly, what this points up though is anything people do financially during a marriage before a divorce without a prenup or a postnup, it's kind of neither here nor there. In Illinois, it's all, well, in equitable division states, which is all but 8 states in the U.S., and during a marriage before a divorce case is filed in community property states, it's all in the same pot. It's either community property or community debt, or it's marital property, marital debt, generally speaking, if it's incurred during the marriage. And what you say, do, whatever, it means nothing if it's not a binding prenup or postnup. So when people say, well, I have my money and he has his money, for example, he has his own bank account with his money in it. Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, and he's a good, I'm a good saver and they're a spender. Well, I hate to tell you, you're going to be sharing that big savings account 50-50 roughly with your soon to be ex if you get divorced, and you pretending that there's a wall between the two of you doesn't mean anything to the judge. So in this case, I understand the person being upset. If they can't convince their spouse to do anything, your only remedy is to get divorced. And Rahul and I have seen this in our firm for years, these circumstances people are unhappy with. They'll say, my spouse won't work. They refuse to work. And they say, well, how long has that been going on? 10 years. Well, you've decided, your only remedy for that is tell them to get a job or else. And the or else is getting divorced. So if you choose to remain married to these people, you kind of pay the price. So that's the answer on this is, yeah, he can do it. It's not smart, but the husband can do it in this case. So that's the answer. So let's talk about this last question. And this is interesting. So the person says, so my situation is a little different than your typical divorce. I filed for an order of protection due to domestic violence on myself and my son. A day later, my husband opened a new bank account in his name. 3 days later, he was served with divorce papers, meaning she filed for divorce. My question is, the bank account he opened, am I entitled to that money that's in there now? My lawyer's trying to tell me not to worry about it, but I'm tired of him getting away with everything. Advice or insight. So can you address the bank account issue, but more importantly, kind of the getting away with it stuff, like the bigger picture, Rahul? And, you and I have talked about this before. I don't think on the pod, but we have this issue where there's money moving around and kind of some misconduct going on. And, what do you say to people about that when they're concerned that somebody's kind of getting away with something financially, let's say?
That's a great question. I feel like in a majority of divorces, we at least once or twice, if not more, we hear about, our clients saying, their spouse is getting away with something, that they've somehow done something and that they've gotten away with it. So in this situation, your lawyer says, don't worry about it. Well, I tend to agree with them insofar that no one has gotten away with anything. The act of opening a bank account is not someone getting away with something. As part of your divorce, you started off with filing an order of protection. Then you filed for divorce. He has opened a bank account. In Illinois, any accounts opened during your marriage or just in this case, I'm talking about accounts because you're specifically talking about a bank account, but any bank accounts opened during the course of the marriage is considered marital. The very act of filing for divorce does not now suddenly, under Illinois law, say that you're no longer married. You're still considered married. So the account you're opening in Illinois or your husband's opening after you file for divorce, or just before you file for divorce, whatever the timing is, it's still marital. And you're still entitled to your equitable portion of that account. Now, what your next steps likely will be is the two of you will be ordered to exchange what are called financial affidavits, where he'll have to disclose A, the existence of this account, B, the amount of money he's got in said account. Your lawyer can and probably will also issue discovery requests to request every single bank statement that this account has or has generated to show how much money came in and came out. You'll have that. If you're really concerned that he's siphoning all the money through this account or is otherwise spending money callously just to prevent you from getting some of it, so to speak, or let's say he's got a paramour that he is now spending money on, etc., your lawyer can certainly ask the court, among other things, to try and enjoin his ability to spend from this account. I think we may have talked about it in a previous episode, but it's called a temporary restraining order followed by a preliminary injunction that really says he's not allowed to spend money except for your regular customary expenses that were done during the marriage or otherwise just for his day-to-day survival, so to speak, not necessarily traditional expenses to get by every day. No exorbitant amounts of spending, etc. No cash withdrawals, transfers, etc. So there's a lot of things you can do, but you're at the very, very beginning of your case here. So there's nothing anyone can actually get away with here. Unless he liquidated every single one of your accounts and fled the country and is nowhere to be found, then yeah, maybe he did get away with something. But that's not the case. It's very important to stay patient, listen to advice that you're paying for, and also to very much, it's good to question, you trust but verify, 100%. But at the same time, everything won't happen immediately.
Yes.
Things take a while to sort of cook. And so you'll have to just sort of, you're in the waves now. You're going to have to hold on and just ride the waves. And you have to trust that your attorney will be looking out for your best interests.
That's great. And there's always that cost benefit analysis. We're going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 in attorney's fees to chase $2,500 or something like that. We don't want to get in that situation. So if we're going to do a temporary restraining order to try to stop something, we want to make sure it's worth the client's while and spend that money wisely. So yeah, the bottom line is just opening an account after a divorce case is filed in Illinois is meaningless. That's still going to be marital property. Importantly, if you're in a community property state, that is going to be separate, a non-community property. Once a divorce case is filed, it has a magical effect in a community property state. There's no more accrual.
So what's a community property state? What is that for our listeners who don't really know what that is?
So there are only 8 of them. California is one of them. And I think you said Wisconsin is another one. I don't have them memorized.
Wisconsin's one. Louisiana might be one. I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah.
California, Arizona is.
Arizona.
Texas is.
Yep. So basically, it's just a different way of handling what we call marital property or non-marital property. Community property is the property of the marriage, and non-community property is property of the individuals. And it's one significant difference is upon the filing of a divorce case, there is no new accrual of community property. The community is severed at the time that the case is filed, according to my understanding. Consult a local attorney for details, folks, always. This is not legal advice. So, but the gist is, in our state, marital property continues to pile up, and so does marital debt. So that becomes an issue in our cases, especially the ones that take a year or 2 years. That can be very significant with a person earning a high income or with growth in marital assets happening. That can be a major issue in our cases. And we value in our courts, technically they can value assets at any time or pick a time to value them, but traditionally they value the assets at the end of the case, at the time of the divorce trial, for example, or settlement, whereas assets can be valued at a different time in community property. So the big thing to me, though, is once you file, you stop creating new community property. So again, talk to a lawyer in your jurisdiction for details. So I thought these were good questions from the community. And we invite you to join our Illinois Divorce Support Network, link in bio and in the description for the show and the show notes. So free to join, anonymous to post. It's for Illinois only. We're going to create a national group based on the book, I Just Want This Done. There's an I Just Want This Done Facebook page. We will create a group for it that will be national in scope. I haven't built that yet. Also wanted to tout a subreddit. We have a high net worth divorce subreddit we created, but we're not trying to make money off of it or sell anything. We are literally started it because there wasn't one. And we are just answering people's questions in there about high net worth, high income divorce cases. So you can check that out in Reddit. There's a couple divorce communities there, but there was no high net worth specific ones. So we started it. The actual name is R High Net Worth Divorce, r/High Net Worth Divorce. Pretty simple to find. It's just straight up just a word. So check it out on Reddit. We'll put the link in the notes for you. And then stay tuned here because we've got a very funny segment. Before we go into that, though, a word from our sponsor. My name is Raiford Palmer. Of course, I'm at STG Divorce Law. We're in Chicago and the suburbs. We've been in business for over 30 years. Our bag is divorce. We handle complex divorce cases all over Chicagoland. We've been in business a long time. A couple of us are fellows in the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. We just were named best lawyers in Tier 1 for Chicago for family law. We're very proud of that from the folks at Best Lawyers. And a few of our attorneys were named best attorneys in divorce by that organization. We've got a slew of awards for our attorneys this year in 2026. And Doyle's Guide, originally out of Australia, just named us. Several of our attorneys received awards and some of the highest recognition from their organization. So we're proud of that. Our firm is easy to reach at stglawfirm.com. If you're interested in having us talk with you about your divorce case, if you're in the Chicagoland area, if you're not and you need a referral, we're always happy to give referrals free of charge, talk to you a little bit about your situation. And we have a network of attorneys and folks we work with across the country and in Canada. So we are happy to help connect you with somebody who can give you help if you need it. That's a free service we provide. Also, our podcast, of course, the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast, is named after my book, I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds. The title of the book or covers behind me on the shelf there. It's available on Amazon Kindle, and where all ebooks are sold, it is in softcover, hardcover, whatever format you like, and also Audible. So check that out. It's a whole lot of great information about divorce. It's a bestseller 4 years after publication, rated one of the best family law books of all time by Book Authority. It was number one and frequently pops up on the bestseller lists on Amazon. So, and soon to come out with my next book, which is really more of a prequel, and we'll talk more about that in the future. But we've got the pod, we have this stuff, all this content we're putting out, and our firm YouTube page, STG Divorce Law on YouTube, tons of content there. And on social, you can reach Rahul at Chicago Divorce on Instagram. And I'm at Raiford Palmer on X, Instagram, and easy to find at Raiford Palmer on Facebook. And we put out a whole lot of educational videos at no charge. Those are all really available both at our socials at TikTok, at Raiford Palmer, Instagram, and on Facebook. We have shorts and full-length long videos about really every topic under the sun about divorce. So we keep adding more very frequently. So check that out for more information. So with all that said, let's get on to the fun stuff. Calling all Gen Xers, this old school dating trend is back. This is a story from Pure Wow. And I'm a Gen Xer, so this is near and dear to my heart. So Pure Wow, this article is by Emma Singer. This is from a couple weeks ago. The author says, it's hard to keep up with the latest dating trends these days. Yeah, I'll say we're talking about them in every show. 1 minute, we've championing delusional dating and contra dating, which we haven't looked into, and I need to. We're lambasting throning and Tarzaning, and Rahul will talk about that. The latest dating trend isn't about texting etiquette, ghosting habits, or any other modern day challenge. It's something much more retro. Think those fleeting IRL sparks, a stranger smile in the subway, a shared laugh in the grocery aisle, that lingering eye contact you can't just shake. So then they get into this, that the missed connections thing from Gen X, which was on Craigslist, is back. So this is where people post. We'll have a link to the story. There used to be a section, that probably still is, on Craigslist called Missed Connections, and somebody would post. And the comedian Nick Thune actually has a great bit about this. He actually sang a song about a missed connection. And that's THUNE. For those of you who don't know about Nick, he's amazing. So he had a bit about missed connections. So they used to post like, I saw you on the subway, the L train in New York. I'm making that up. I don't know much about New York. And it was Tuesday at 2:00. You had the red hat. I was the guy in the camouflage jacket. I'd love to talk to you. And then people could check that and see if they might remember them and then reach out to them. That was the idea. So people are now doing this on Instagram and TikTok. I'm just going to quote this Misconnections PDX, which I think is Portland. And it says, met you near Heart Coffee on 22nd and couch under a tree. Kearns in parentheses. You had on a blue shirt that was open with a light colored shirt under curly hair and glasses. Blue jeans that were high waist with beautiful pockets that fit you perfectly. Blue jeans that were high waist with beautiful pockets. Yeah, I told you I like your outfit. I told you that you smile a lot. I was the unshaven, sweaty dork who still has more compliments to give you. Dude, that's not how the game works. You do not say that. I couldn't tell if you're inviting me to coffee when you asked me if I liked coffee, and I didn't want to offend you if you were with partner already. Anyway, I jogged everywhere looking for you, and I was a tad too late. I was trying to make sure I didn't make a huge mistake. LOL. Don't make me start going to Heart every Thursday to find you. Also, thank you for accepting my compliments. If you're my age, you will know to come here and find me. Please, you're so hot. Bye. The person then explains the backstory of Misconnections. It says in the 90s and early 2000s, this Misconnections on Craigslist was popular. It's now in the community area of the website with more oversight, because I guess it got a little out of control. But now in the social media platforms, there's a revival. And New York Times reports there's an Instagram revival attracting city-dwelling people. And it's being seen in Reddit and TikTok. And there's a post on TikTok of a woman explaining a missed connection. Apparently, if you search hashtag missed connections on TikTok or Instagram, you get thousands of posts from people tracking down a fleeting crush. Not everyone's in it for love. Some are in it for entertainment. Shocker. So that's the scoop on the misconnections, but I thought that was great. So monkey barring.
Monkey barring, essentially, is what they call this new quote unquote trend or dating term where people, sort of like in the playground, they go from relationship to relationship and they have a new relationship waiting in the wings. So they eject from the old relationship and swing or monkey bar into the new one. And it's very fleeting, and it's very, very akin to what we see these days with the Twitter sort of attention span and the swiping, the dating apps that you have where you can swipe potentially from an infinite number of matches, just swiping and swiping. So that's happening in real life, and they call it monkey barring. And so this article from USA Today really talks about it. It says, so it might make you feel like that blindsided kid at recess where all of a sudden you're playing with someone and suddenly you're all alone and the person is playing with somebody else next. And in dating, partners move from connection to connection, only letting go of the old one when they've moved on to the next. And Amanda Miller, a professor of sociology at the University of Indianapolis, says in this article, she quotes, the behavior isn't necessarily new. And she says, I'm pretty sure this might be biblical. And it's very prevalent among Gen Z who are struggling to find connections in real life, given the rise of dating apps. So they're avoiding the vulnerability that comes from leaving a relationship and being alone. So they are seeking security. And that's why people are, I guess, monkey barring, so that that way they're like, I don't have to be all doom and gloom, depressed because I broke up or someone broke up with me. I'm already to the next one. They have this sense of stability that comes from being able to say, I'm leaving this relationship, but I've got something I'm going towards.
Right. And then the related story is like Tarzaning, which I mentioned is a word in this other story. And it's the same thing, swinging from one vine to the next and, grabbing one but holding on to the other one, then letting go. And that's the idea of going from like one relationship hopping to the next one. And, I hate to tell you, but that's not new. That's just got a new name. And I think the one thing that's true is the one thing that I could see happening here is the availability of these, like this said in the article you were reading, the dating apps, make people feel like there's an abundance, that there's this sort of a limited supply of new people to date. And that might be feeding into the Tarzaning or monkey barring. I love how the names keep changing. We had to talk about this trend, and we like, what the heck is monkey barring? And then you can imagine a kid swinging from one to the next. Yeah, or Tarzaning. So that's what's going on. Watch out for if your mate on the monkey bars swinging to the next one, you better watch out. So then they talk about what you should do in the Tarzaning article where I wanted to look up what that was. And they talk about how do you deal with it? And basically it's like, don't stalk them and like try to figure out what they're doing. Just if you like lay back and not pressure them, that's probably the better move. Or break up with them and say, if you suspect it's going on, then don't put effort in the relationship. So
right.
This so I talked about the Gen Xers thing.
Oh, okay.
So you've got to talk about Shreking. We had to see what this was. Yeah, another one came up. Another one.
Yeah. Another like DJ Khaled says. So Shreking. So Shreking, as someone might think, oh yeah, is that the movie Shrek? Yes, it absolutely is the movie, or about the movie, or related to the main character of the movie, also by the name of Shrek and Shrek 2. Shreking in the dating world, as it's newly been coined, refers to dating someone you consider below your standards, with the assumption that because you're out of this person's league, you're way, quote unquote, better than them, looking wise, personality wise, whatever the case is, you'll automatically have the upper hand in the relationship and be very unlikely to get hurt. So this is from a Cosmopolitan article. So to get Shreked is to strategically date down in this manner, only to still wind up getting rejected, heartbroken, and or otherwise screwed over by someone you deemed inferior. As one TikToker put it, this article says, we've all been there. We give the guy we're not attracted to a chance, thinking that we will for sure know what he has and treat us well, and then we get traumatized by a whole troll. That's what Shreking is.
So Shreking, not only I thought it was just dating somebody like less attractive than you to like dominate the relationship, but actually it's that bites you in the butt and they dump you.
I think so. I was trying to figure that out. It's sort of like, I think it's just the first part, but then I think they're saying that it inevitably comes back and you get dumped anyway, and then you feel even worse about yourself because you consider this person so inferior to begin with.
Right, like how dare they leave you? So now you're down a couple extra notches. Okay,
exactly.
That's interesting.
Exactly. So, all right. So they say why, then there's a portion of this article that says, well, why is Shreking so toxic? And I mean, I think it's obvious, right? It's the notion of a kind of dating pool caste system, as it calls it in the article, where individual daters have a certain market value determined by their looks, age, income, and other superficial factors.
Everybody knows about the number system.
Exactly.
That's old as time. So that's funny. It's interesting. So that's all the time we have for the show today, folks. We got to get running, but thank you very much for being here, and we enjoyed having this show live. I hope you liked it. We enjoyed it. We'll be publishing the edited full version that typically comes out every Friday. So that should be coming out not this Friday, but next. But you got to see us live. So thanks very much. We enjoyed having you with us, and we'll be back. And check out our previous shows. We got 37 episodes with all kinds of content. You can find the stuff you like there and that you find helpful. Thank you very much for listening. For Rahul and I and STG Divorce Law, have a great day. Thanks.